Hello, my name is Kiana Giddings, and I will be informing you about the knowledge of DNA. The purpose of this presentation is to inform my audience about the purpose of DNA and the things it is used for, so that they can be aware of all of its applications. Many situations in a person's life or criminal cases would not have found a solution without the help of DNA. So it is good to know what DNA is and how it can be used. On July 9, 1977, a woman named Kathleen Crowell claimed that a 16-year-old teen named Gary Dotson raped her while she was walking through a mall parking lot after work. In July 1979, he was convicted of kidnapping and rape. But 10 years later, August 14, 1989, he was exonerated for a crime he did not commit. Using forensic DNA, it was discovered that she fabricated the whole story. I got that from Northwestern Pritzker School of Law. It is good to listen to the speech because you will discover that DNA is not only used to know our genetic makeup, but it also has more applications. And it is always good to have some knowledge of them. Many personal situations in a person's life or criminal cases would not have found a solution without the help of DNA. So it is good to know what DNA is and how it can be used. Since I am man of DNA as well as everyone in the world, I believe that it is a good idea to know what it can be used for. Before I make this presentation, I looked at different scholarly websites to aid me in writing this informative speech. In this speech, first I will describe what DNA is. Second, I would examine different things DNA can be used for. Third, I will discuss some common forms of DNA testing. So, what is DNA? DNA is a double helix. A double helix is a description of the structure of DNA molecule. A DNA molecule consists of two strands that wind around each other like a twisted ladder. And I got that from the National Genome Research Institute. DNA has a double helix structure with a sugar phosphate on the outside of the helix, forming the sugar phosphate backbone of the DNA. And I got that from the Introduction to Chemistry. DNA is also the genetic blueprint to all living things. DNA is a complex, long-chain molecule that contains the genetic blueprint for building and maintaining all living organisms. And I got that from What is Biotechnology? DNA is called the blueprint of life because it contains the instructions needed for an organism to grow, develop, survive, and reproduce. And I got that from Socrates. DNA is also has hereditary material in everyone. DNA, or deoxyribonucleic acid, is the hereditary materials in humans and almost all other organisms. And I got that from the U.S. National Library of Medicine. Our modern understanding of DNA's role in heredity has led to the variety of practical applications, including forensic analysis, paternity testing, and genetic screening. And I got that from Khan Academy. Having discussed what DNA is, I will now tell different situations in which DNA can be used. DNA can be used in determining if an organ transplant will be rejected. According to National Genome Research Institute, they were also able to demonstrate an increase in the amount of donor DNA detected over the time before the onset of rejection symptoms, which other techniques under consideration have not been able to accomplish. Because donor DNA can be detected earlier than other rejection signals, physicians might use that information to increase immune suppression, to get ahead of a rejection event before it happens, keeping both the transplanted organ and the patient recipient healthier. Live Science said, but in this technique developed by Stanford bioengineering professor Stephen Quake, the levels of organ DNA, specifically of certain chromosomes in the blood, are tested as early sign of rejection. Another way DNA can be used is for paternity testing. Cleveland Clinic said, when a baby is conceived, each parent passes on half of his or her DNA to the baby, whose genetic code, or DNA, is a shared mix of only its mother's and father's DNA. By collecting and examining a small sample of DNA from the baby and the potential father, a paternity test can confirm or disapprove that the man is indeed the biological father of the baby. The Cleveland Clinic said, DNA paternity testing can show that a man is highly likely to be the father with about 99.9% accuracy, or that he is excluded as being the father with 100% accuracy. DNA can also be used in criminal investigations to help solve cases. The United States Department of Justice Archives said, in a case where a suspect is identified, a sample of the person's DNA can be compared to evidence from the crime scene. The results of this comparison may help establish whether the suspect committed the crime. The United Department of Justice Archives also said, news stories extolling the success use of DNA to solve criminal abound. For example, in 1999, New York authorities linked a man through DNA evidence to at least 22 sexual assaults and robberies that had terrorized the city. After discussing different things DNA can be used for, I will now discuss some forms of DNA testing. One way is mitochondrial DNA testing. It can be used for genetic genealogy ancestry testing on the mother's side. And that came from the U.S. National Library of Medicine. Both males and females have mitochondrial DNA, which is passed from the mothers, so that this type of testing can be used by either sex. It provided information about the direct female ancestral line, and that came from the U.S. National Library of Medicine. ISOC said mitochondrial DNA testing traces a person's maternal or mother-line ancestry using DNA in his or her mitochondria. Twins zygosity testing DNA test can determine if twins are identical or fraternal. The American Pregnancy Association said a twin zygosity DNA test definitively determines whether twins are identical or fraternal. A twin zygosity DNA test is a simple procedure performed after the babies are born. The Washington State Twin Registry said a twin zygosity test compares the DNA profiles of a pair of twins at a number of markers. Markers are well-studied sequences of DNA to see whether they match. If many of these markers are the same, then it's highly probable, greater than a 99% chance, that they are identical twins. If the twins are different at one or more markers, they are considered fraternal. DNA can also be used for autosomal DNA testing. ISOC said autosomal DNA tests can be used to confirm relationships with a high level of accuracy for parent-child relationships and relationships up to the second cousin level. Ancestry DNA said autosomal DNA test traces a person's autosomal chromosome, which contains the sequence of DNA a person shares with everyone to whom they are related, maternally and paternally, both directly and indirectly. In this speech, I described what DNA is, I examined different things DNA can be used for, and I discussed common forms of DNA testing. This speech shows that many personal situations in a person's life or criminal cases would not have been found without the help of DNA. So it is good to know what DNA is and how it can be used. DNA is a very wonderful and complex thing, and it is very amazing to know information about what it is and knowing its uses. Thank you for watching.
That's it?
Oh, and these are my work site.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.